don't know if you can see the disgust on my face. The Tom was already on the ground. He was down in there. I guess you can figure out what happened next. Gone. Stay tuned. I'm going to talk about trail cameras and getting zeroed in and ready to go for opening day hunting season. Okay, I'm back in my tree stand, getting ready to take a few shots here, but I'm setting up my trail camera. You see it right here. And yes, I've got gloves on. So we'll talk about that too. So does it matter if you put your trail camera up with gloves or not? I used to think it mattered a lot, but after last year, I don't think it matters that much at all. It might make a slight improvement, it just depends. But I just did this for today's video. You put them on with your gloves or without your gloves, it just depends on the deer, their personality, you know, their character traits. Are they really skittish? You know, maybe they've been around humans and they're used to it. If you're in a farm belt or something like that, they may not care. You may be on public land in a remote wilderness area. The first sign of humans, or the first scent they get of a human, they take off. So it depends on the situation. So I'm gonna leave it up to you. So if you're in an area that they're not used to human presence, I'd recommend using the glove. But I can tell you this, and we'll get back to why I'm using my tree stand to set up my trail camera. Last year I came in, I like to do what I call scout and hunt. I'll go to an area, maybe I've dropped a pin or something, or it's an area I've walked through, hiked through before, or hunt, or walked out, maybe hunting or whatever. This might be a pretty good place to hunt, you know? So either way, whether I've dropped a pin or not, I'll go in there and I'll scout an area. This looks good. Set my tree stand up. I may come back. I may give this a 3-day hunt, you know? So then what I do is I go set my trail camera up. I did the exact same thing last year. I went and scouted an area. I said, this looks like a good spot. It was in a small bench on a ridge. Set my tree stand up, and then went and set my trail camera up probably, 30, 40 yards away. About 20 minutes before dark, here come a doe and 2 fawns. And she's just walking along the trail, and all of a sudden she stops. I'm thinking, well, I know she don't get wind of me because I'm 20, 25 feet up my tree stand. She looks around, and then all of a sudden she turns her head complete 90 degrees and looks straight at my trail camera. And I'm looking, I'm thinking, she's looking straight at my trail camera. Then she proceeds to walk off the trail and put her nose up to it. I had just used gloves and just put the camera up, and she spotted it. And I can tell you this, on public land and even on private land, I've gotten pictures of a nice buck, but usually I only get one picture of that buck. They know it's there. It's one of those situations where I don't know if the human scent ever comes off of it, depending on how much rain or whatever, or just the manufacturing process of the trail camera. Trail cameras are made out of plastic, and that's oil-based, so is there a smell that comes off the plastic? The boards inside, do they have solder joints? The noise of the IR or the shutter? I can go on and on and on. The flash, somehow they know it's there, whether it's scent, sight, or sound. So my recommendation is use your best judgment based on your experience in your area. Like I said, if you're in a farm belt and they're used to tractors and they're used to people out all the time, it may not be that bad. But if you're in an area, a remote area, and the deer rarely see humans, I'd recommend using the gloves. And I did that today, but I'm on my private land. I did it for this video. All right, let's get back to the trail camera. I would say it's probably 12 feet high. The main reason why I set this camera up this high is because of the story I just relayed to you. I don't want does, and if there's ever any bucks in here, which they're few and far between, I don't want them getting spooked by the trail camera. So I've got it set up high, and it's not that inconvenient. I've got my tree stand in here. It's fairly easy for me to do that. In some places, if I hike into them, I'll use a log, or I'll climb up some limbs and set the camera up high. I just don't want them to see my camera. And a lot of times, We put the cameras 3 or 4 feet off the ground, which is perfectly for the deer as far as their line of sight, sound, and their scent. So they're walking right into the cameras. And another good reason to hang your trail camera in an elevated position above normal height is to keep people from stealing it, to prevent theft. People don't walk through the woods with a tree stand on their back or climbing sticks. So by putting it high, not only do you avoid detection by deer, you avoid detection by other people who may be a little dishonest and want to take your trail camera. So there's another good reason why you should hang your trail camera a little higher. Just make sure, like on this one, I've got it in a bend on the tree and it's actually aiming at the ground. I mean, obviously you don't want to put it 12 feet up and have it shooting straight out. You're not going to get anything. Have it pointing down at the ground. You know, if I can't get it this high, you know, like I said, if I don't have a tree stand, then I'll climb a few limbs and at least get it 6 to 8 feet up. And a lot of times you'd have to just tilt it back. I take a little bit of the excess belt, fold it up, put it behind the camera, and tilt it down to the ground, aiming at the trail, wherever. Just trying to get a slight advantage over the situation. I don't want the deer to know that I'm there. I'm setting my trail camera up so I don't get detected. I want to detect the deer, but I don't want them to know that I'm here. And I probably won't come back and check this for 2 weeks. I'll leave it for 2 weeks, hopefully get all the movement. I don't know how often the deer are moving through here, and see what happens, see what takes place. And then, you know, there's a lot to talk about with trail cameras. And now I did a video a couple years ago where I think I went over all the fundamentals and basics. You can look that up on my channel if you want to, and I'm not going to do that again this year. You know, it's one of those situations where, you know, most people, they do all the research, they understand what the range is, what the trigger speed is, and all that good stuff. They understand all the features of the camera, but how to use the camera is totally different. You've got to understand that deer can pick up on things. And when we talk about a camera making a noise, deer, as far as their hearing goes, from everything that I've researched, they have better hearing for high frequency, where we have better hearing for low frequency. Low frequency examples are a man talking, you know, someone with a deep voice, or you've got a bass, someone playing bass, or someone playing the drums. Whereas a high frequency, obviously, and you know, some of this is just fundamental, is squeaks. You know, maybe a squeak on a wheel or a tire, or you know, maybe a flute, something like that. High frequency, someone playing the flute, or maybe one of your predator calls where you got a rabbit making a squeal. That's high frequency. So if your camera makes a high frequency sound, the deer can pick up on it. You always wonder why they're looking straight at the camera, because they found out something, either with their eyes, their nose, or their ears. That's some of the aspects of a trail camera that we have to understand. Okay, is it going to help me or hurt me? And then another thing I want to talk about is when you set your trail camera up is the frequency. And I just said I won't come back and check this for 2 weeks. A lot of times we come back and forth in the woods, you know, every 2 or 3 days checking our trail cameras. And what we're doing, even though we don't know it, especially if you're on public land and the deer aren't accustomed to a lot of human presence, is we're increasing the pressure on the deer, even though we don't know about it, or we're not aware of it. You know, your presence in the woods is pressure, regardless of whether it's checking a trail camera or you carrying your weapon. Deer doesn't know the difference. All they know is, hey, during their feeding times in the morning or the afternoon, you were there checking your camera and you spooked them. And that's one of the things you don't want to do, obviously. And you don't want them to pick up on you coming in there, especially your access trails. That's something we can talk about a little bit later. And I've talked about access trails on some other videos. So your trail cameras are there to detect the deer, but they're not there for the deer to detect us. So you gotta be really careful. You gotta be cautious on how you set them up, how you use them, the frequency that you go into the woods, how often, you know, how many times you're going in there a week to get them, especially leading up to opening day. A lot of studies show that, you know, a week to 10 days, it takes the pressure to subside and deer to kind of go back into the normal routine. So that's what I was saying. 2 weeks before the start of the season, hopefully I've got all the intel I need for my camera. I'm done with it. Now, if I decide to bring it back up 2 weeks before the season, I'll leave it. I'll come and hunt. And on the day that I hunt, whether I harvest a deer or see a deer, I'll take it back with me then. But I won't come back in. I want to minimize the amount of pressure that I'm applying in the woods. And that's something we gotta be conscious of, because deer feel the pressure, like I said, regardless of whether you're carrying a weapon or not. So I'm gonna get back to shooting here. It's perfect. Low light, I gotta shoot between those trees there, get some good simulation in. But I went over a few items on trail cameras, how high to set it up, or do you need to wear gloves, but being focused on their eyes, their ears, and their nose. You know, you want to detect them, they don't want to detect you. So the second thing I want to talk about is low light shooting conditions. I don't know if you can see with this camera, but there's a 3D target in the woods. It's low light out here. It's early this morning. It's a little foggy. It was a little foggy this morning. Fog's cleared off. But a lot of times we practice during midday or afternoon, perfect lighting conditions, and we have no concern with finding our peep or finding our pins in our peep site. And a lot of times, and you guys know this, the prime movement periods are early morning, late afternoon. So you need to get out there with all your gear on, get your face mask and everything on, and shoot in those low light conditions. And make sure that you can see through your peep sight and find your pins. Because last thing you want to do is get out in the woods, you know, nice buck or doe comes through and you can't see through your peep sight. Now obviously you got to follow the local game land laws or local laws in regards to light. At the same time, within those confines of those laws, you got to be able to shoot, and you got to know what your limitations are. So it's a lot different when you shoot in low light conditions. You've got to concentrate a lot more than you do when it's perfect conditions and you're not having any issues seeing through your peep sight and trying to find your pins. So that's one of those situations where you can find the right color pins if you're using different pins that reflect and have more light in the afternoon or early morning. You can change those a little bit, modify them, or you can modify the diameter of your peep. You know, some peep sights are really small diameters, some are large. You can work with that to see which ones allow the most light to come through. But the bottom line is we need to be practicing in low light conditions, either early morning or late afternoon. Hey, while I'm up here making this video today, I'm gonna go ahead and check out some of my mineral licks. And this is the second mineral lick. If you watched some of the videos before, I've got a ridge that runs north and south. And I've got one on the west side, one on the east side. So I'm just following this deer trail. You can see it going right through here. It should go pretty close to where that mineral lick's at. And actually it's joining another one right here. Got another one coming off the ridge. It's actually going up through there. So we got two trails converging, which that poplar tree there, well, that's too close. Probably that poplar tree there, depending on the wind, give you a better angle for shot. That one right there is too close. It'd be a very steep shot. Now look where this trail is coming in at. And you can see already where the leaves have been raked out by the deer. They're all over this. You still see some of the minerals in there, but you can tell they're coming in here. And I really don't like to put my stand right over a mineral lick or anything like that. I usually put it far out in front or off to one of the trails. This is kind of a little finger ridge. So I've got the main ridge here. I've got a little small finger ridge that comes down and goes on down through there. So when you're setting this stuff up, this is the way I look at it. And here's just a little bit more information on this video. Is, a lot of times on private land, guys are getting things set up to try to draw the deer in, whether it's food plot, attractants, or whatever. And you get right on top of it. If the deer spend a lot of time in that area, they're real familiar with it. So it might be better to get in front of it or behind it, depending on which direction you think the deer are coming, whether you're in the morning or the afternoon. And that way you can ambush the deer as they're en route to the food plot versus trying to shoot them in the area where they're spending 10 or 15 minutes. The other thing to remember too is sometimes mature bucks don't get to the food till late. All right, so we're going back up here, but this deer trail is worn out pretty heavy. I don't know if there's a nice buck in here, but it would be a good place to ambush a doe. And like I said, that tree right there, about 15 yards off the trail, that smaller poplar tree right there, that would be really good. Let's get back up here and keep practicing our low light shooting.